Welcome to Almost Alone. I'm your host, and tonight we're going underground, literally. This episode is called Underground, and it features two stories from people who experience something terrifying in the one place millions of us go every single day, the subway. One takes place in New York, the other in London. Both cities, both crowded transit systems. Both situations where being surrounded by people didn't matter because the person watching had already decided. These aren't stories about supernatural dangers or unexplained phenomena. These are stories about human predators, about surveillance, about the moment you realize someone has been studying you, learning your patterns, waiting for exactly the right moment. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. If you've been listening for a while, I appreciate you. Either way, if these stories resonate with you, consider subscribing. It helps more people find the channel. And if you want to support the work I do here, you can hit the like button or leave a comment sharing your own experience, if you're comfortable doing so. These stories are told calmly, but they're not easy. They stay with you. They make you think about the platforms you stand on, the trains you take, and the people you don't notice watching. Let's begin. I'm 32 now. What I'm about to tell you happened 14 months ago, which means it's still close enough that I can feel it in my chest when I talk about it. My therapist says that's normal, that the body remembers trauma differently than the mind does. I believe her, because even now, when I hear a train approaching, my legs lock up. I was living in Manhattan at the time, working as a project coordinator for an architecture firm in Midtown. The office was on 42nd Street, and I lived in a studio apartment in Astoria, Queens. The commute was simple. N train from Times Square to Astoria Boulevard, about 25 minutes door to door. I made that trip twice a day, 5 days a week, for 3 years. I knew that route the way you know the hallway in your own apartment. I knew which car was least crowded depending on the time of day. I knew where to stand on the platform so the doors would open right in front of me. I knew which buskers played at which stations and what time the evening rush died down enough to get a seat. Routine, predictable, safe. That's what I thought. The attack started making news around October. The first one happened at Union Square. A man in his 50s was waiting for the L train when someone pushed him onto the tracks. He survived. The train was still 100 feet away, and bystanders pulled him back up. He told police he never saw who did it, just felt hands on his back, and then he was falling. The second happened 3 weeks later. Different station, 34th Street, Penn Station. A woman, mid-30s, pushed onto the downtown platform during evening rush. She wasn't as lucky. The train was already entering the station. She died on impact. The third was at 59th Street, Columbus Circle. Another man, early 40s, pushed from behind. Survived with a shattered pelvis and traumatic brain injury. He's in a wheelchair now. By December, the whole city was on edge. The NYPD increased patrols. The MTA put out warnings. News stations ran segments on platform safety. Stand back from the yellow line. Stay aware of your surroundings. Keep your back to a wall if possible. People started acting different underground. Less phone scrolling. More looking over shoulders. You could feel the paranoia in the air, thick and electric. I was careful. I stood back from the edge. I kept my headphones in only one ear. I watched the people around me. But I wasn't paranoid. Not yet. That changed on a Wednesday in early January. I was heading home from work around 6:30 p.m. The platform at Times Square was packed. Usual rush hour chaos. I positioned myself about 15 feet back from the yellow line, near one of the support columns. Good sight lines. Wall behind me. I felt smart, prepared. The N train was 2 minutes out, according to the board. That's when I noticed him. A man standing about 20 feet to my left, closer to the edge than most people were comfortable with anymore. He wasn't looking at his phone, wasn't reading, just standing there, hands in the pockets of a dark jacket, watching the crowd. There was nothing obviously wrong about him. Mid-30s maybe, average height, jeans, sneakers, a knit cap pulled low, the kind of face you'd forget immediately. But something about the way he was standing felt deliberate, patient, like he was waiting for something specific. I watched him for maybe 30 seconds. He didn't move, didn't shift his weight, just stood there, scanning the platform with small controlled movements of his head. Then the train announcement came over the speaker, and people started pressing forward toward the yellow line. The man moved with them, but he didn't move toward the tracks. He moved laterally, weaving through the crowd, repositioning himself closer to a woman in a red coat who was standing near the edge, scrolling through her phone. I saw it happen in slow motion. He walked up behind her, fast, purposeful. I opened my mouth to shout, but someone else beat me to it. A guy about 10 feet away yelled, "Hey!" and started moving toward them. The man in the dark jacket stopped mid-step, turned, and disappeared into the crowd, just melted into the sea of bodies like he'd never been there. The woman in the red coat looked up from her phone, confused, unaware of how close she'd just come. The train pulled in. Doors opened. Everyone got on. I got on too, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. That night, I filed a report with the MTA through their online system. Described the man as best I could. Dark jacket, jeans, knit cap, average build. I knew it wasn't much. I knew thousands of people fit that description, but I needed to do something. 2 weeks later, I saw him again. Same station, different time, morning commute, around 8:15 a.m. I was waiting for the downtown N when I spotted him on the opposite platform, waiting for an uptown train. He looked different. No knit cap this time. Hair was lighter, maybe dyed, maybe a wig. He was wearing glasses, a bulkier coat that made him look heavier. But the posture was the same. The way he stood, the way he watched. I stared at him across the tracks. He never looked in my direction. When his train came, he got on. I never saw where he got off. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was seeing patterns where there weren't any, that the news coverage had gotten into my head, but I couldn't shake it. The fourth attack happened 3 days later. 72nd Street Station. A man in his late 20s pushed onto the express tracks during morning rush. The train was going full speed. He died instantly. Witnesses described the pusher as average height, dark clothing, possibly wearing a baseball cap. The description meant nothing. It could have been anyone. But I kept thinking about the man I'd seen, the way he moved, the way he watched. I started changing my routine. Different train times, different cars. I even took the bus a few days just to break the pattern. It didn't matter, because he'd already been watching me. I didn't know that yet, but I was about to find out. It was a Thursday evening in late January. I'd stayed late at work to finish a presentation. Left the office around 8 p.m. The platform at Times Square was less crowded than usual. Post-rush hour lull, that weird gap between commuters going home and people heading out for the night. Maybe 40 people scattered across the platform. I stood in my usual spot, back to the column, 15 feet from the yellow line. The board said the train was 3 minutes out. I was scrolling through my phone, half paying attention, when I felt it. That prickling sensation on the back of your neck, the one that tells you someone's looking at you. I glanced up, and there he was, standing about 30 feet away, partially obscured by the crowd. Different appearance again. Shaved head this time, wire-rimmed glasses, a puffy winter coat that added bulk to his frame. But I recognized the posture, the stillness, and this time he was looking directly at me. Our eyes met for maybe 2 seconds. Then he looked away, casual, like it had been an accident. My heart started hammering. I moved, walked along the platform toward the exit stairs, trying to put distance between us without making it obvious. When I glanced back, he was moving too, paralleling me, staying about 20 feet back, weaving through clusters of waiting passengers. I stopped near a group of college-age kids, safety in numbers. He stopped too, leaned against a pillar, pulled out his phone like he was checking something. The train announcement came over the speaker. 1 minute out. People started moving toward the edge. I stayed where I was, pressed into the crowd of college kids. And then I lost sight of him. 1 second he was there, leaning against the pillar. The next, he was gone. I scanned the platform, couldn't find him. The train was approaching. I could hear it in the tunnel, the growing roar of steel on steel. People pressed forward. I stayed back, letting them move around me. And then I felt someone very close behind me. Too close. I started to turn, and that's when the hands hit my back. Not a shove, a push. Hard, precise, right between my shoulder blades. I was airborne before I understood what was happening. The yellow line passed beneath me, then the edge of the platform, then nothing but air and the tracks rushing up to meet me. I hit the ground hard. My right shoulder took most of the impact. Pain exploded through my arm and ribs. My phone flew out of my hand, skittering across the tracks. I had maybe 1 second of clarity. The train was coming. I could see the headlights, could feel the vibration through the rails beneath me. Someone on the platform was screaming. I rolled. There's a drainage trough between the rails, a narrow service pit, maybe 18 inches deep. I'd heard about it before, from a news story about someone who survived a similar fall. I threw myself into it and pressed my body as flat as I could. The train was on top of me. The sound was impossible, deafening, a scream of metal and air and speed that erased every other sense. The undercarriage passed inches above my head. I could feel the heat, could smell burning brake dust and grease, could feel the displacement of air trying to suck me upward. I pressed my face into the filthy concrete and didn't breathe. It lasted maybe 8 seconds, but it felt like drowning. When the last car finally passed and the sound began to recede, I lay there shaking, couldn't move, couldn't process what had just happened. Then I heard voices, shouting, people yelling for help, for a conductor, for the police. I climbed out of the trough on the far side of the tracks, away from the platform. My legs barely worked. My shoulder screamed. I tasted blood, must have bitten my tongue during the fall. Transit workers pulled me up onto the platform at the far end. Someone wrapped a jacket around me. Someone else was on the phone with 911. The crowd was chaos. People crying, people filming on their phones, people asking if I was okay, if I could stand, what happened. I kept saying the same thing over and over. Someone pushed me. He pushed me. But when I looked for him, for the man in the puffy coat with the shaved head, he was gone. The police arrived within minutes. Paramedics right behind them. They took me to Mount Sinai, 3 broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, moderate concussion. I was lucky, they said. Incredibly lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt hunted. The investigation moved fast. The MTA pulled surveillance footage from every camera on that platform. Detectives interviewed witnesses. 40 people had been standing there. At least a dozen saw me go over the edge. But no one saw who pushed me. Footage showed me standing near the college kids, showed the crowd pressing forward as the train approached, showed a brief gap as people moved around me, and in that gap, for less than 2 seconds, a figure appeared behind me. Dark coat, head down, face obscured by the angle in the crowd. Hands came up, made contact with my back. I went over the edge, and the figure turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd moving toward the train doors. 3 seconds, That's all it took. But here's what made the detectives go quiet. When they compared that footage to the previous attacks, the ones at Union Square, Penn Station, Columbus Circle, and 72nd Street, they found him. Same movement pattern, same approach, but different appearance every time. At Union Square, he'd been wearing a maintenance worker's vest, blended right in. At Penn Station, he'd worn a suit, looked like any other commuter. At Columbus Circle, casual clothes and a Mets cap. At 72nd Street, running gear, like he'd been jogging. But in 3 of the 5 videos, when he raised his hands to push, you could see a detail the crowd had missed. A scar on his left hand, curved, distinctive, running from his wrist to the base of his thumb. It was the same person. He'd been changing his appearance systematically. Different clothes, different builds, padding under jackets, lifts in his shoes, even different hairstyles and facial hair. He was meticulous, and he'd been doing this for at least 4 months. The break in the case came from a search of transit databases. They cross-referenced Metro card swipes against the times and locations of all 5 attacks. One card showed up at 4 of the 5 stations within 30 minutes of each incident. They tracked that card, found where it was purchased, a bodega in the Bronx, got security footage from the bodega, got his face. They identified him within 48 hours. Leon Garrett, 26 years old, lived alone in a studio apartment in Tremont, worked night shifts at a warehouse in Long Island City. No prior arrests, no history of violence, nothing that would flag him as dangerous. When they arrested him, he didn't resist, didn't say a word, just let them cuff him and put him in the car. The search of his apartment is what broke me. They found notebooks, pages and pages of notes, handwritten logs tracking subway schedules, platform layouts, crowd patterns at different times of day. He'd mapped out which stations had the best camera blind spots, which had the slowest response times, which had the deepest track pits. And he'd been watching people, specific people. The detectives found a file on me, 6 pages, front and back, photos taken with a telephoto lens, me getting coffee near my office, me waiting on the platform, me walking home from the subway, time-stamped, dated. The earliest one was from 7 weeks before the attack. 7 weeks. He'd been following me, learning my routine, noting which train I took, which car I preferred, where I stood on the platform. There were notes about my habits, that I usually wore headphones, that I checked my phone while waiting, that I stood back from the yellow line but moved forward when the train approached. He documented my entire pattern, and next to my name, in neat handwriting, was a single word: primary. There were 5 other files, 5 other people. 3 of them were his previous victims. The other 2 were people I didn't recognize. People he'd been studying but hadn't gotten to yet. During the interrogation, he wouldn't explain why, wouldn't say what drove him to do it. But the forensic psychologist who evaluated him said he showed signs of extreme dissociation, that he didn't see his victims as people. He saw them as obstacles or problems that needed removing. He kept journals describing each attack, rating them, analyzing what worked and what didn't. He called it refining the method. The trial was brief. The evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 25 years to life. But before the sentencing, he sent me a letter. The DA's office forwarded it to me. Asked if I wanted to read it. I almost didn't, but I needed to know. The letter was short, 3 sentences, handwritten in the same neat script as the notes. You were supposed to be on the express platform. You changed your routine that day. Why? I read it 5 times before it sank in. He was wrong. I hadn't changed my routine. I'd taken my normal train, at my normal time, from my normal platform, which meant his notes were wrong about something. His 7 weeks of surveillance had missed a detail. and that detail saved my life. But here's what keeps me awake. If he got my routine wrong, whose routine did he get right? The police never figured it out. They checked the other files, but those two people, the ones he'd been watching but hadn't attacked yet, they couldn't identify a connection, couldn't find a pattern. They're still out there. Two people who have no idea they were being watched, studied, chosen. I moved out of New York 4 months after the attack. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't take the subway without feeling those hands on my back. Couldn't wait on a platform without scanning every face, looking for him even though I knew he was in prison. I live in New Jersey now. I drive to work. I avoid crowds. But sometimes late at night, I think about that letter. You changed your routine that day. I didn't, but someone else did. And that random change, that one deviation from their normal pattern, is the only reason I went over that edge instead of them. I survived because of a mistake, because Leon Garrett was watching the wrong person at the wrong time and didn't realize it until the moment his hands hit my back. 3 seconds of confusion, 3 seconds where he thought I was someone else. That's all that separated me from being victim number 5. Not awareness, not preparation, not caution, just luck. And the worst part, I'll never know who I was supposed to be. I'm 26 now. This happened last October, which means it's been 4 months, not long. Still fresh enough that I can't ride the tube anymore, not at night anyway. My flatmate doesn't understand. She says I'm letting one bad experience control my life. She's right, but she wasn't there. I was out with my friend Maya that night. It was a Friday, and we'd gone to a club in Shoreditch, one of those basement places with good music and terrible ventilation. We'd been dancing for hours. I wasn't drunk, just pleasantly buzzed and exhausted, in that good way where your legs ache, but you don't care. We left around 3 a.m. The street was still busy. People queuing for kebabs, smoking outside pubs, waiting for night buses. London at that hour has a specific energy, messy and loud and alive. Maya wanted to get an Uber, but I said the tube was faster. The night tube runs all night on Fridays and Saturdays on the Central Line, and we could get it straight from Liverpool Street to hers in Shepherd's Bush, 15 minutes tops. She hesitated, but I insisted. We were tired. We just wanted to get home. I wish I'd listened to her. We got to Liverpool Street Station around 3:20. The platform was moderately busy, maybe 20 people scattered along its length. A mix of clubbers heading home, shift workers, and a few people who looked like they'd been drinking for 10 hours straight. The digital board said the next westbound train was 2 minutes away. We stood near the middle of the platform. Maya was scrolling through her phone, checking messages. I was leaning against one of the pillars, people watching. That's when I noticed the woman. She was standing about 15 feet away, closer to the edge than most people. Mid-30s, I'd guess. Long dark coat, scarf, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She had a canvas tote bag over her shoulder and was staring down the tunnel, waiting for the train. Nothing unusual. Just another tired person trying to get home. The train pulled in. The doors opened. Everyone got on. We took seats near the middle of the car, one of those 6-person sections with seats facing each other. Maya sat across from me. The woman in the dark coat sat diagonally from us, near the doors. The car was maybe half full, enough people that it didn't feel empty, but not crowded. The doors closed. The train pulled out of the station. For the first few minutes, everything was normal. Maya and I were talking about the club, who we'd seen, what songs the DJ played, whether we'd go back. The kind of meaningless conversation you have when you're too tired for anything deeper. The woman in the dark coat wasn't doing anything, just sitting there, staring at the floor, like everyone else. The train slowed as we approached the next station, Bank, but it didn't stop. It rolled straight through the platform without slowing down. A few people looked up, confused. One guy leaned toward the window and said, "Did we just skip bank?" Maya and I exchanged a glance. It wasn't unheard of. Sometimes trains skip stations during maintenance, or if there's a signal issue, but usually they announce it. We waited for an announcement. Nothing. The train kept moving. 1 minute passed, then two. We should have been at St. Paul's by now, but the train just kept going, the rhythm of the tracks unchanging. People started getting restless. Someone tried the emergency intercom near the doors, pressed the button, waited, no response. "Maybe it's broken," Maya said quietly. I didn't answer. I was watching the woman in the dark coat. She hadn't moved, hadn't looked up, just sat there with her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. 5 minutes became 10. The car was getting warmer, stuffier. People were shifting in their seats, looking at each other, starting to mutter. "This is ridiculous," a man in a suit said loudly. "How long are we supposed to just sit here?" No one answered him. Then, without warning, the lights went out. Complete darkness. The kind where you can't see your own hand in front of your face. Someone screamed, short, startled. A few people swore. Then the backup lights came on, dim red, casting everything in a sickly glow. Maya grabbed my arm. "What the fuck is happening?" "I don't know," I said, but my chest felt tight. The train was still moving. Same speed, same rhythm, like nothing had happened. Then someone shouted from the far end of the car, "Hey, hey, someone help." Everyone turned. A man was standing near the doors between cars, pulling on the handle. The door was supposed to be locked during transit, but it was slightly ajar. He was trying to pull it open. "There's someone in the next car," he shouted. Something's wrong." 3 other people got up and moved toward him. One of them helped pull the door open. It shouldn't have opened. Those doors lock automatically when the train is moving, but it swung wide. The next car was dimly lit in the same red glow. I could see people sitting in the seats, silhouettes, motionless. The man stepped through, into the next car. He stopped. "What the fuck?" he said quietly. One of the other people leaned through the doorway. I heard her gasp. "They're not moving," she said. "None of them are moving." Maya and I stood up. We couldn't help it. We needed to see. We pushed through the small crowd that had gathered near the door and looked into the next car. She was right. There were maybe 10 people sitting in that car, all of them in the same position they'd probably been in when the lights went out, slumped in their seats, heads down, hands in laps, not moving, not reacting to the people standing in the doorway, not reacting to anything. "Are they asleep?" someone asked. But it didn't look like sleep. It looked like something else. The man who'd opened the door stepped further into the car and approached the closest person, a younger guy in a hoodie. He reached out and touched his shoulder. Mate, are you all right?" The guy didn't respond. The man shook him gently, then harder. Nothing. He leaned down, trying to see the guy's face. Then he jerked back, stumbling. "His eyes are open," he said. "He's staring, but he's not fucking moving." That's when someone behind us screamed. We turned. The woman in the dark coat, the one who'd been sitting near the doors in our car, was gone. Her bag was still on the seat. Her scarf was on the floor, like it had fallen when she stood up. But she wasn't there. "Where did she go?" Maya whispered. No one had seen her get up. No one had seen her move. We'd all been looking toward the other car. I walked back to where she'd been sitting and picked up her bag. It was heavy. I opened it. Inside was a wallet, keys, a phone, a book. Everything you'd take with you, everything you'd need. But she was gone. The train lurched. We all grabbed for the poles and seat backs. Then it started slowing down. For a moment I felt relief. We were stopping. We could get off. We could figure this out. But when I looked out the window, I realized where we were. We were approaching a station I didn't recognize. The platform was lit, but the lights were old, yellowed and flickering. The walls were tiled in a style I'd only seen in historical photos. Curved archways, vintage signage. This wasn't an active station. This was one of the abandoned ones, the ghost stations, the ones they closed decades ago and never reopened. The train slowed to a crawl, then stopped. The doors opened, and there were people on the platform, maybe 6 or 7 of them, standing perfectly still, spaced evenly along the platform's length, all of them facing the train, none of them moving. "What the fuck?" someone whispered. I pressed my face closer to the glass. One of the people on the platform was wearing a long, dark coat. The same coat the woman from our car had been wearing. I could see her ponytail, her canvas bag. She was standing among them, facing us, completely still. "That's her," I said. "That's the woman from our car." "That's impossible," Maya said. "She didn't get off the train." But there she was. The door stayed open. The people on the platform didn't move. For maybe 10 seconds, we all just stood there, us in the train, them on the platform, staring at each other. Then the doors closed. The train jerked forward, and we were moving again. Someone was crying. I think it was the woman who'd looked into the other car. Someone else was on their phone, trying to call 999, but there was no signal. The train picked up speed. The red light stayed on, and then, as suddenly as they'd gone out, the normal lights came back, bright, fluorescent, harsh after the dimness. Everyone blinked, disoriented. The train began to slow. I looked out the window and saw familiar tiles, white and blue, Notting Hill Gate, a normal station, people on the platform, bright lights. The train stopped. The doors opened. We got off. All of us. Every single person from that car stumbled out onto the platform like we'd been drowning and finally found air. I turned and looked back into the car we'd just left. It was empty, clean, like nothing had happened. The next car over, the one with the motionless people, I couldn't see into it from this angle. The doors closed. The train pulled away. Maya and I stood on the platform, shaking, trying to process what had just happened. A transit worker approached us, asked if we were all right. We tried to explain. 6 other people tried to explain. All of us talking over each other, trying to describe the lights going out, the people in the next car, the abandoned station, the woman who disappeared. The transit worker looked at us like we were drunk. "What abandoned station?" he asked. None of us could answer. We didn't know which one it was. We didn't recognize it. "And you're saying a passenger disappeared from your car?" "Yes," I said. "She was sitting right there, and then she was gone. And then we saw her on the platform at the station, but the doors never opened." He nodded slowly, asked for our names, wrote them down, said someone from British Transport Police would follow up. We gave our information and left. Maya went home to Shepherd's Bush. I went back to my flat in Hackney. Neither of us took the tube. We got Ubers. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I got a call from British Transport Police. They wanted to take a statement. I went in, told them everything. They took notes, didn't react. 3 days later, a detective called me. He said they'd reviewed the CCTV footage from the train. "We can confirm a woman matching the description you gave boarded the train at Liverpool Street," he said. "And we can confirm she was in your car." "Okay," I said. "So where did she go?" There was a pause. "The footage becomes unclear during the section where you reported the lights going out," he said carefully. "There's about 3 minutes of static. When the footage resumes, she's no longer visible in the car." "What about the other passengers?" I asked. "The ones in the next car who weren't moving?" "We spoke to several passengers from that train," he said. "They don't corroborate that detail." "What do you mean?" "We all saw them." "Ms. Ellis," he said quietly, "everyone we spoke to remembers the lights going out, and everyone remembers feeling unsettled, but their accounts differ significantly about what happened during those few minutes." I didn't know what to say. "We're treating this as an ongoing investigation," he continued. "If we learn anything, we'll be in touch." They never called back, but 2 weeks later, I got a message on Instagram. It was from someone I didn't know. No profile picture, generic username. The message said, "Were you on the Central Line night tube on October 13th? I stared at it for a long time before I replied, "Yes." "Why?" The response came immediately. I was on a different train that night, different line, but something happened. "I need to know if you saw what I saw." They sent a photo. It was dark, grainy, clearly taken through a train window. The flash had bounced off the glass, but you could still make out what was beyond it. A platform, old tiles, dim flickering lights, and people, 4 or 5 of them, standing perfectly still, facing the train. The timestamp on the photo said 2:14 a.m., an hour and a half before the woman in the dark coat boarded our train at Liverpool Street. I zoomed in on the photo. One of the figures was wearing a long dark coat, ponytail, canvas bag. I couldn't see her face, but I didn't need to. I know what I saw. I replied to the message. "What station was this?" They responded, "I don't know. It wasn't on the map." The train didn't stop. It just slowed down as we passed through. I asked, "Did anyone on your train disappear?" They didn't reply after that. I checked the next day. The account had been deleted. I never found out who sent me that photo, never found out what line they were on or where they were going, but I kept the screenshot because 4 days later, October 17th, I saw a news article. The woman in the dark coat had been found. Maintenance workers discovered her in a service tunnel between Liverpool Street and Bank. She was alive, hypothermic, dehydrated, but alive. She'd been missing for 4 days. When police interviewed her, she couldn't explain how she got there. She remembered boarding the train, remembered the lights going out, then nothing until she woke up in the tunnel. Medical evaluation showed no signs of head trauma, no drugs in her system, no physical explanation for the memory loss. She told police she remembered walking, but she didn't know where or why, and she kept saying over and over, they were waiting. When pressed, she couldn't explain who they were. The investigation found evidence that made no sense. She was discovered in a section of tunnel that's only accessible from the platform, meaning she would have had to exit the train, cross a platform, and enter a locked service door. But the train never stopped at a platform between Liverpool Street and Notting Hill Gate. The CCTV confirmed it. And the tunnel where they found her, forensics said the dust and debris on her clothes matched an abandoned station. But she couldn't have accessed that station. It's been sealed since the 1940s. The case was closed as an unexplained incident. The official report cited a dissociative episode triggered by exhaustion and possible intoxication, though her blood work showed she'd had less than one drink. She moved out of London within a month. I tried to reach out to her once through the news article's journalist, just to see if she remembered anything else. The journalist said she'd declined to comment further, but they forwarded one message from her. "Tell anyone who asks, I remember now. I knew them, all of them, but I've never seen them before in my life. I don't ride the night tube anymore, and I don't stand near the edge of the platform because sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that photo, the one showing her on a platform at 2:14 a.m., 90 minutes before she boarded our train. I think about the people standing with her, still, silent, waiting. and I think about what the transit worker said when I tried to report it. What abandoned station? Like he genuinely didn't know. Like maybe those stations aren't on any map anymore. But the trains still pass through them. And the people who wait there, they're still waiting. That's the end of tonight's episode. 2 cities, 2 subway systems, 2 people who came very close to something they still can't fully explain. One survived because of a mistake, because the person watching them got their routine wrong by just enough to matter. The other survived because, well, we don't really know. Because the train kept moving. Because they got off at the right station. Because something decided to let them go. These stories aren't about avoiding public transit. They're about understanding that the people who hunt don't announce themselves. They blend in, they watch, they wait. And sometimes, the only thing standing between you and them is timing you can't control. If tonight's episode resonated with you, I'd appreciate it if you take a moment to like the video or leave a comment. If you have your own story, something that happened on a train, a platform, or anywhere else you thought you were safe, you can submit it through the link in the description. And if you haven't already, subscribe. There's more to come. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay aware, and the next time you're waiting on a platform, maybe stand a little further back from the edge.